Hello and welcome to today's video. Today's video is something I didn't ever expect to make, but here we are making this video. So we're looking at the French cone, or as it's called in-game, the FCM.36. So the first thing to look at is the armor, and this is by far the best thing on this tank. The armor on the front is 40mm thick, and it's got a bit of an angle to it as well, so that ends up being actually really effective against other battle rating on vehicles, as I'll show you later. And then we have to look at the gun, which is by far the worst thing on this vehicle. As you can see here, the only round for this vehicle is an APCR round, and the best it can pen is 36mm, which is just awful. This thing really struggles to pen any tank at all, and because it's a 37mm APCR, it's just bad. You have to pen things multiple times before they'll die usually, and that's if you can pen them at all. So this gun is actually awful. This tank's also rather slow. It's definitely not one of the slowest things I've made a video on, but it is slow. So let's see what this thing is like in a battle. So we pull up this hill and spot and kill a Panzer 35T. Now we see a second one which we start firing at, and this further back one is slightly angled, so we keep bouncing rounds off him over and over again. We do manage to get one through him and set him on fire, but then we start bouncing rounds again. Admittedly, some of these are because I've got a bad shot, however some of these are just because the round is bad at penning things. We do finally get the kill on him though. And we also start getting shot at from the right hand side by a Flak Panzer 1. The Flak Panzer 1 has a 20mm which can pen about 60 odd mils of armor. We managed to kill him in one shot, but he bounces all of those rounds off me. So we start firing at a Panzer 38TA, and this thing takes 2 shots to die. The first shot doesn't actually go through, the second shot does kill him. We also start taking shots from the left hand side, and we spot a Panzer 3B and we start firing at him. As you can see, the Panzer 3B is actually taking a lot of shots. With the Panzer 3B we are penning him, but because it's a 37mm APCR, it's not doing much damage once it goes in. So you'll see lots of rounds that bounced off the right hand side of me. I start firing at Keeney, and we do actually pen the Keeney there, but it only kills one crew member inside his vehicle. And then we get another pen which takes his engine almost out, but it's on fire. Of course, we died from a shot from a different tank, and he's burning, and he burns to death. Presumably he didn't have any FPE, I don't know. Let's talk about the history of this tank a little bit. So this tank has a bit more history than the tanks I've talked about before. A lot of tanks I've talked about before usually are prototype or have very little usage. However, this did have 100 made, and was designed to be a light infantry tank, similar to what you see with maybe a Matilda or something like that. Obviously it's a worse tank than a Matilda, like a lot worse, but it's the same sort of concept. It only has 2 crew members, which of course is just awful. A commander and a driver, which means that the commander is going to be just so busy. Imagine trying to do the job of gunning, loading, and spotting all at the same time. It just isn't really feasible. Now, because this tank was a French tank, it doesn't have too much combat history, but when it was used in combat, it was ineffective. It could take out vehicles that are unarmoured or lightly armoured, but it could not take out actual tanks. The armour on something like an early Panzer III was too thick for a tank like this. And you may know that an early Panzer III doesn't actually have that much armour, and it kind of just goes to show how bad this gun is at an anti-tank role. Of course it was designed to support infantry and not necessarily fight other tanks, but that was obviously going to happen. So in the end, these tanks saw some combat but not too much, as France surrendered quite early on in the war. However, these tanks were captured by the Germans and converted into tank destroyers, being given 75mm guns, and I want to see these being put into War Thunder, because could you imagine this thing with a 75? I don't know what they did to it, but I want to see it. There was even a version of this where they gave it a 105mm gun to become an SPG, which, again, I really want to see a War Thunder. So that's it really for the history. It was just a bit useless, and then it was converted into some probably very comedic vehicles by the Germans. So where does this thing go on the leaderboard? Now this is the weird thing about this vehicle, is it's objectively awful, but the armor's so thick that you can't die. I've never felt so tanky in a tank before than playing this at a long range against an enemy. Sure, I couldn't kill things, as most of the fighting scene that I had was just me shooting things and bouncing things. I bounced a good 40 rounds, which you did not see me fire because I just cut it out. It's just awful footage of me just firing at things, bouncing for ages. But you did see a lot of rounds just bouncing off my armor as well. So it's not actually the worst vehicle I've ever played. I thought it might have been, but that armor is effective. Honestly, it is effective armor. In fact, the armor's so effective that I might even put it quite high up the leaderboard. I think it deserves a decent place on this leaderboard, so I'm going to put it just below the Command Porsche Tiger. Now, this thing is definitely bad, but it's a battle rating 1, and it's free, so why not use it? I guess. Probably because it's in the French tree, that's probably why you don't want to use it. Who knows? Some people apparently like that tree. So if you're going to use it, my advice would be sit far back, try and angle yourself a bit, and try and hit anything that's flat. Goodbye, I'll see you guys next time with probably another War Thunder video.